Shalom, shalom to all the congregation of Israel and all those of the other nations as well. I'm pretty sure I've done the House of Wisdom, bringing unto you another class related to the calendar that is being put out through the Holy Spirit. Not even just the calendar, but the calendrical study guide for the Gregorian years of 2021 through 2022. Most High willing, what we're going to be talking about today are some of the components of the calendar. We're going to be talking about the cycle diagram that you find within the calendar and also the parts of the year that were given to Enoch from the Spirit by the angel Uriel. I'm joined today by my reader to my right, priest Gabaria, and to my left, apprentice priest Tijan. Most High willing, we're going to once again begin talking about the calendar. First, let's start off as we started off last week, talking about why it's so essential to know about a calendar, to have a calendar, know when to serve the Most High in due season. AP Tijan, if you grab Numbers chapter 28, verse 1. The reason we put forth the calendar once again is not just so we can, have a nice project that we can work on, not so we can fill our time. There's so many other things that the priesthood can fill their time with. The purpose for having a calendar is so that we can know when to serve the Most High in due season as commanded of us. Let's get that. Numbers 28, verse 1.
Numbers chapter 28, verse 1. And the Most High spake unto Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel, and say unto them, My offering, and my bread for my sacrifices made by fire, for a sweet Savior unto me, shall you reserve to offer unto me in their due season.
All right, so in due season, we must come to offer the sacrifice unto the Most High in due season. Everything in the scriptures, everything in the Bible was about sacrificing and worshiping the Heavenly Father with those sacrifices. This is of the utmost importance. And to know when to do those in due season is once again of the utmost importance as well. So to do this, we must put forth a calendar so we know when these high holy days are, when the daily oblations are, when the lots are, so that we can, within the day, give sacrifices all day. It is of the utmost importance. Priest Gabar, if you'll grab Genesis chapter 8, verse 22. Now, let's examine this calendar. As you see, for those who have already ordered their digital copies of the calendar and their physical copies, which will be coming soon, Most High willing, you probably already looked through it. You probably started studying it already. You'll see on page 11 a diagram of the cycle of the year. Let's go ahead and pull that up for those who may be watching online and for those who are here in the audience as well. You'll see a diagram of the yearly cycle, and it has many components to it. What we're going to do today, Most High willing, is break down the components of this cycle, of this cyclical year. You'll see, firstly, on those outer rings, the 2 seasons of the year. Now, we in Western society have been deceived and lied to and told that there are 4 seasons. Now, we understand where we get that from because the Most High divided the year into 4 quadrants. However, the Most High said that there are only 2 seasons. Once again, if we're talking about spring and talking about fall, we are missing the season and the time to come and serve the Most High. He gave us these 2 seasons that are divided by the equinox, the vernal and the autumnal equinox. Let's go and grab that in Genesis chapter 8, verse 22.
While the earth remaineth seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease.
So Noah had just came off the ark, and he gave a sacrifice to the Most High. And the Most High promised him something. I'll show you this rainbow, and within this rainbow is my promise and my covenant with you that I will no longer flood the earth. And as the earth remains, seed time and harvest will not cease. You will not have things going out of season. You won't have, this year there was absolutely no harvest and everybody starved. You will not have a hot season and a cold season, and then another season coming forth as well. And you also always have summer and winter, these 2 seasons that the Most High put forth. Not fall, not spring, but summer and winter. These are the 2 seasons that the Most High put forth. And obviously you see that as we pull up the diagram again. In the cycle of the year, the 2 large groupings in the outer rings, you see summer and winter. And you see summer and winter being cut off by these equinoxes or these intercalary days. The vernal equinox starting the biblical year, which starts the summer. and ends the winter. And then you see the autumnal equinox down at the bottom of this diagram, which ends the summer and starts the winter season. Now, APT, John, if you'll grab 1 Chronicles chapter 27, verse 1. Let's leave that diagram up as we start looking at some of the components of it. We're going to skip the what is called the constellations in the second tier of this diagram, and we're going to come back to that later, most high willing. First, let's talk about these months. You'll see the months on the third ring of this cyclical diagram. Now, these months in the Hebrew traditions are not named. They are rather numbered. You have the first month through the 12th month. There are 12 months in a Hebrew year or in a biblical calendar. There are 12 months. Now, David, who received the covenant of David, did indeed give names to the months. They weren't actually names of the months. They were the captains who were in charge of instilling the worship and sacrifice in due season in these months. So in this biblical calendar, you'll see that these months are given the names of these captains who were given charge over, these priests who were given charge over these months. Now, we don't use the terms like Abib and Ziph or Ethanim and Bul as is written in the scriptures because those were actually Babylonian names, Assyrian names, and names of the other nations around there, as we covered in several classes before. But let's understand the course of David in 1 Chronicles chapter 27, verse 1.
Now the children of Israel, after their number, to wit, the chief fathers and captains of thousands and hundreds, and their officers that served the king in any manner of the courses, which came in and went out of month by month throughout all the month of the year, of every course, were 24,000.
So there was a captain or a chief, a priest over every month that came out year by year, month by month. Let's read on.
Over the first course for the first month was Jashobeam, the son of Zabdiel, and in his course were 24,000.
So we already went through the first month this year of Yashobeam, meaning dwelling with the Most High, where the children of Israel were supposed to dwell in the tabernacle of the Most High for 7 days, eating nothing but unleavened bread. Yes. Let's continue on.
Of the children of Perez was the chief of all the captains of the host for the first month. And over the course of the second month was Dodiah and Ohohite. And of his course was Machalath, also the ruler. And his course likewise were 24,000. The third captain of the host for the third.
All right, so now we see in verse 4, the second month was given to Dodai. This is the month that we are currently in. Dodai meaning the gift of love, blessings from the Most High. And we are currently in the blessed wind, which we are going to talk about as well according to this diagram, Most High willing. So in this month of Dodai, the Most High blessed us and was merciful unto us by giving us a second Passover. For those who may have missed the first, there's a makeup or a quote-unquote makeup Passover, an auxiliary Passover. For those who missed the first, they can come to. And this Passover, this second Passover is actually coming up on so-called April 26th, this month coming up, or this week coming up, we have this makeup Passover. So for all the House of Wisdom members who may have missed this day, contact me on the chat or email us if you don't have access to the chat, and we'll give you the info so you can register for that feast day. But once again, this is the course of the second month. Let's jump down to verse 14.
The 11th captain for the 11th month was Benaiah, the Parathonite, of the children of Ephraim, and in his course was 24,000. The 12th captain for the 12th month was Heldai, the Netophatite of Othaniel, and in his course was 24,000.
So we see 12 captains coming in month by month. So this shows you also that they were not following a moon. They did not go off a lunar cycle to count their months. These months were always 30 days. And we showed this several times in several classes, but we're going to go through that today as well, Most High willing. APT, John, if you'll drop that and hold Jubilees chapter 6, verse 30. This is the book of Jubilees, chapter 6, verse 30. Now, we're going to talk about how these Israelites counted their months. We see that if people follow a lunar calendar and they go do their months by the moon, looking at a full moon or a crescent moon or whatever it may be, if they use this to count their months, they will be off 10 days every year, as the scriptures tell us, as the book of Enoch tells us. And what they have to do at some point is add in a 13th moon or a 13th month to the year. When we don't see that in the course of David, he did 12 months every year, and this was their course. There was never a 13th brother waiting on the side just in case when the 13th month had to come around. Following the moon was always our downside amongst the children of Israel, and looking at the stars and the moon and the sun to worship them and to use them for our worship was indeed our downside if we did it out of order and out of course. Let's understand that in Jubilees chapter 6, verse 30. APT, John, go and read that.
All the days of the commandment will be 250 weeks of days, and these will make the entire year complete. Thus it is engraved and ordained on the heavenly tablets.
All right, so Noah, once again, was coming off the ark, and he was thankful to the Most High for redeeming him within these intercalary days. So we're not going to get into it, as is mentioned in Jubilees, but he mentioned the course of the year being 52 weeks. 52 weeks times 7 days is 364 days. He didn't add in that 365th day as they do in the world today. This year was completed in 364 days. Let's continue on.
And there is no neglecting the commandment for a single year or from year to year. Command you, the children of Israel, that they observe the years according to this counting, 364 days.
So as we mentioned, this year is 364 days, which we're going to come back to again, most high willing, as we look at this cyclical diagram. But let's continue on.
And these will constitute a complete year, and they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feast. For everything will fall out in them according to their testimony. And they will not leave out any day, nor disturb any feast.
Now, if they were disturbed this cycle of 364 days every year, then their feast would fall out of cycle. They would be disturbing the cycle that the Most High put forth. Let's continue on in verse 33.
But if they neglect and do not observe them according to his commandment, then they will disturb all their seasons, and the years will be dislodged from this order, and they will neglect their established rules. And all the children of Israel will forget and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths, and they will wrongly determine all the order of the years.
So if we were to go off of something else other than what was established here with Noah, we would be neglecting the feast. We would be dislodging the order of the year, and we would be disturbing the pattern that the Most High set forth. Let's continue on to see what was this disturbance that the children of Israel were going to end up bringing in to their count of the year.
For I know, and from now on will I declare it to you, and it is not of my own devising. For the book lies written in the presence of me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of days is ordained. Or they forget the feast of the covenant, and walk according to the feast of the Gentiles, after their error and after their ignorance. For there will be those who will assertively make observations of the moon.
So there will be those who will make observations of the moon, looking at the moon, and they will end up following after the feast of the Gentiles, following after the feast of a nation who was no nation, doing what they do instead of what the Most High commanded us to do. Let's continue on.
And how it disturbs the season and comes from year to year 10 days too soon.
So the moon ends up changing every year 10 days. So if you were to follow the moon for your calendar rather than the 364 days from the sun, you would end up falling back 10 days every year. So if you would start off on point one year, and then the next year you would start off 10 days before the next actual new year, following the moon. And then the next year, you'll be 20 days off, then 30 days off, then 40 and 50 and 60 days off, so on and so forth. You actually see this amongst the Muslims. Now we're in this little Ramadan season that they do, and right now it's in, April, so-called April. Last year it was like what? So-called May. And the year before that it was like so-called June or whatever. And if you look at a calendar, they've done calendars and counts to show when Ramadan will be for the next 50, 60 years. You'll see it fall back essentially 10 days every year. Why? Because they followed the moon. Their Ramadan is never, ever in the same season. This is the feast of the Gentiles. And this is what we end up instilling within our own culture of following the moon, and our feast fall back 10 days every year. This is the downside and the consequence of following the moon, as it said in the book of Jubilees. They will come in 10 days too soon every year. Read on.
For this reason, the years will come upon them when they disturb the order and make an abominable day of the day of testimony, and an unclean day a feast day.
They will make an abominable day, a day that is the day of testimony, a day that's unclean, that is not a high holy day. They will end up calling it holy. Let's read on.
And they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy. For they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees.
So following the moon will cause the children of Israel to go wrong in the months, in counting the 30 days. They will end up saying, all right, today was 28 days, or this month was 28 days. This month was another 30 days. This month was 29 days, because they were following a moon rather than following that set count that was given by the Most High. They would not only go wrong in months, they would go wrong in Sabbaths. We've seen that several times where brothers are saying this so-called Wednesday is a Sabbath because it's a new moon. This so-called Friday is a Sabbath because it's a new moon. Not doing it according to the count that was given by the Most High of 52 weeks throughout this entire year. Let's continue on.
For this reason I command and testify to you, that you may testify to them. For after your death your children will disturb them, so that they will not make the year 364 days only. And for this reason, they will go wrong as to the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths and festivals, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh.
So they will follow after the ways of the Gentiles, following the moon rather than the months that were given to us. And they will go wrong in their feasts, their festivals, their new months, and everything of that nature, because they went astray. It did not keep the 364 days of the sun and use the moon to count their months and their years. Let's drop that in Priesthood Bar. If you'll grab Genesis chapter 7, we'll start at verse 9. We're going to continue on to prove and show that even in the Bible, within the scriptures, we can see that each month was 30 days. It never changed like the moon changes. If anybody looks at the moon, you'll see that it averages somewhere about 28.5 days or 29 days every month. That is how long it typically takes to make its cycle. And it oscillates in between them. Some days, some months is 28 days. Some months is 29. Some months is 30 days. And it changes every month. But this was not how we were supposed to do our months. This is not what we were supposed to do according to Jubilees. And for those who don't believe in Jubilees, think Jubilees is full of so many errors. Let's see if the scriptures back this up as well. Genesis chapter 7, verse 9. Priest Gabaria.
There went in two and two unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as the Most High has commanded Noah.
All right, so we see that we're talking once again about the flood, and this is the same scene that was being mentioned in Jubilees that we were just reading from. If we read up in the earlier chapters, we'll see that he was talking about Noah and how he operated in the flood. Let's continue.
And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month.
All right, so this is important. This is critical for this breakdown. Let's read that again and keep this marker of time in your mind. For those who, we've broken this down several times, those who probably already know where we're going. For those who don't, keep this marker in your mind as we continue on. Read verse 11 again.
In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month.
All right, so this was the 17th day of the second month. Let's continue on.
The same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken, and the windows of heaven were opened.
So most of us know the basic story of Noah and the ark. He got the ark. The Most High told him build an ark because he's about to flood the earth because of all the evilness. He got 2 of each kind of animal and built an ark, and then the Most High caused it to rain for 40 days and flood the whole earth. We don't look at some of the other smaller details within it, however. So let's look at this. We see that in the second month, on the 17th day of this month, the flood started to come upon the earth. The great deep was broken up, the windows of heaven were open, and it rained for 40 days. Let's jump down to verse 23. Priest Gabaria.
And every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle and creeping things, and the fowl of the heavens. And they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days.
All right, so now we see that the waters prevailed on the earth for 150 days. We were given a direct measurement of time in this scripture. So with that being the case, if we know when it started and we know how long it lasted, if we were to find the end point, we can do simple math and see how long each month was. Do the scriptures tell us that? Yes, they do. Let's continue on in chapter 8. Genesis chapter 8, verse 1. Priest Gabaria.
And the Most High remembered Noah and every living thing, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And the Most High made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged.
All right, so the waters were assuaged, meaning it stopped raining, and they start to go down. They start to decrease at this point. Continue on.
The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters returned from off of the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated.
All right, so after the 150 days, the waters stopped. There was no more flooding, and the water started to decrease. And at this point that he's going to mention in the 4th verse, this was when the water stopped. This was the end of the 150 days. Read on.
And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, on the mountains of Ararat.
All right, so on the 7th month, on the 17th day of this month, the waters stopped. This was the end of the 150 days. So remember the starting point that we had. 2nd month, 17th day. This is exactly 5 months later. Now, once again, doing simple arithmetic, we can take the 150 days and divide that by 5 months. And how many days do we get from that division? 30. It is an even 30 days for each month. Now, if the Most High, who established a covenant with Noah, who gave Noah everything, wanted Noah to do a month based on the moon, why was it that it was 30 days every month? Why wasn't it 1 month it was 29 days? Why wasn't it 1 month it was 28? Why was it that it was 30 days every single month, equaling a total of 150 days? Noah was commanded to do a month of 30 days, just as Enoch was given, just as we today are commanded to do the same thing. These months are required to be 30 days, and that's it. And on certain months, an intercalary day. But we do not follow the moon to determine our months. So let's go back to the diagram, the chart that you will find within your calendrical study guide on page 11. We have the seasons. We skip the constellations. We'll go back there, Most High willing. And then we see the months starting at the vernal equinox. You'll see it starting at the starting position, the vertical bar at the top. That states vernal equinox. We see first month being 30 days, then the second month, which we're in, being another 30 days, and then the third month, and so on until you get back to the vernal equinox once again at the 12th month. Now, the next point, what you'll see is the portals. Now, you see the portals, they do not completely align with the months. Priest Gabaria, if you get Enoch chapter 72 and verse 1, let's talk about these portals and what these portals are. Now they are as well 30 days, which Enoch clearly tells us. However, they do not line up with the months. The first portal is not the first month, and the second portal does not line up with the second month. There is a difference in counting between these, and we're going to explain that most high willing. But let's go to the book of Enoch, another book that is not adulterated, not something that has filled many lies. Many of our Israelite constituents want to stray away from Enoch, and simply it's because they do not understand it. And I'm not throwing shade. This is just the truth. It is a cryptic book. It is indeed difficult to understand. However, we cannot just toss something out because we do not understand it. We have to beseech the Heavenly Father and ask Him to send forth the spirit of understanding so that we can read these with understanding eyes. Let's go and read that in Enoch chapter 72, verse 1, talking about the portals that are put here in the Calendrical Study Guide.
The book of the course of the luminaries of the heaven, the relations of each according to their classes, their dominions, and their seasons according to their names and place of origin, and according to their months, which Uriel, the holy angel, who was with me, who is their guide, showed me. And he showed me all their laws exactly as they are, and how it is with regard to all the years of the world and unto eternity, till the new creation is accomplished, which dureth till eternity. This is the first law of the luminaries. The luminary, the sun, has its rising in the eastern portals of heaven, and its setting in the western portals of heaven.
All right, so now we see that the sun brings forth these portals throughout the faces of heaven, starting in the eastern side. Now, we have another diagram, which we're not going to pull up today, but we'll see on here that this right side where it says winter, at the top right, that quadrant is what was known, according to Enoch, as the eastern face of heaven. And the next quadrant that says summer, at the bottom left side of this diagram, was where the western side was. And the portals start in this eastern side, where it says winter. At the winter solstice is the start of these portals. This is why you see that difference between the months and the portals on this diagram. You see that the portals actually start at the winter solstice. The first portal starts in the 10th month of the year. Let's read on.
Enoch, the book of Enoch 72, in the 3rd verse. And I saw 6 portals in which the sun rises, and 6 portals in which the sun sets. And the moon rises and sets in these portals. And the leaders of the stars, and those whom they lead, 6 in the east and 6 in the west, and all following each other in accurately corresponding order. Also, many windows to the right and left of these portals.
All right, so now we see 6 coming in this first half of the year, going from the winter solstice all the way up to the summer solstice. That's in so-called June. Around so-called June. This is the first 6 portals in which the sun is rising, or it's waxing. It is increasing in its strength. And we should all see that if we ever pay attention to the seasons. If we look at the time of the winter solstice, this is when the sun is at its lowest point. This is when the night is the longest point of the year, and is the coldest day of the year, around so-called December, around mid to late December. This is the time of that winter solstice. At that time, after that day, the sun begins to become renewed. And this is where as a side note, this is where the Gentiles get their little Christmas and winter solstice festivals. They are looking at the sun as their god, and it has essentially died off that day and now is being reborn. And this is why they took Christmas and made it something to be a day you celebrate Christ's resurrection or his birth. Because the pagans were looking at the birth of the sun, or the sun being reborn, and they acquainted that with Christ to convert them to Christianity. Moving back to the point, however, this we see is the start of the portals of the year. Not the months, but the portals that are attributed to the sun. The first portal being the winter solstice, 6 more as the sun increases all the way up to the winter solstice on the left side of that diagram. And then the sun starts to decrease from there. It decreases another 6 portals from the summer solstice all the way over to the winter solstice in the latter half of the summer and the beginning of our winter. This is how the portals are counted, and there's 6 on either side, 12 portals in total. Let's continue on.
Enoch 72 in the 4th verse. The first there goeth forth a great luminary named the sun, and his circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and he is quite filled with illuminating and heating fire. The chariot on which he ascends, the wind drives, and the sun goes down from the heaven and returns through the north in order to reach the east, and is so guided that he comes to the appropriate portal and shines in the face of heaven.
So the sun is driven by the winds, which we'll get to as well, most high willing, and the sun shines on the earth 30 days within each of these portals. Let's continue on.
The 6th verse. In this way he rises in the 1st month in the great portal, which is the 4th.
So Enoch clearly tells us how we count these portals. The first month, our first month, corresponds to the 4th portal of the sun. Not the first portal, the 4th portal. Let's continue on.
Those 6 portals in the cast, and in the 4th portal from which the sun rises in the 1st month are 12 window openings, from which proceedeth a flame when they are opened in their seasons. When the sun rises in the heaven, he comes forth through that 4th portal 30 mornings in succession, and sets accurately in the 4th portal in the west of the heaven.
All right, so the sun rises and sets within this portal 30 days, 30 times, just like the months. Now, once again, these do not align directly with the months, but they follow the same pattern. 30 days for one portal, just as it was 30 days for 1 month. And in this month, the sun brings forth flames and winds, which we're going to talk about as well, as you can see on this cyclical diagram. Now, let's continue on. Before we go to the winds, let's jump back up and go to these constellations. Now that we understand that the sun brings forth these portals, we can understand the constellations as well. I didn't want to go to it before we talked about the portals. Let's jump back up on this diagram to the first ring where we see the names of the children of Israel, the names of the tribes of the children of Israel. And let's break down these constellations as well. We can take down the diagram and let's go to 2 Ezra chapter 15, verse 1. APT, John. Go and grab 2 Ezra chapter 15, verse 1. Now, we're going to get to it a little bit later as well in this class, but most are willing. But we'll see that the sun and the stars, they all follow the same course. The stars stuck with the sun, and the moon was the only thing that deviated. So the sun brings forth these portals, and within these portals comes forth these stars, which come together to build these constellations. Now, we know about the zodiacs and all that stuff. This is something different. What the Greeks did with the zodiacs, what the Babylonians did with their constellations, they all stole that from the original calendar given to the children of Israel, given to Noah, given to Enoch, given to the chosen lineage, even before the Babylonians, before the Greeks, before the Romans. And you'll see that they start taking it and attributing their gods and their ways to the constellations that were given to the children of Israel. But let's read that. Firstly, proving that these constellations are something that we should be keen and privy to in 2 Ezra chapter 15, verse 1.
Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Most High.
All right, so we see that the Most High is promising Ezra that words of prophecy will come forth unto the children of Israel in the latter days. Let's jump down to verse 11 and see what kind of prophecy he was talking about.
But I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues, as before, and will destroy all the land thereof.
All right, so as before, we being in the spiritual Egypt, as the Most High did with the ancient Egypt, the physical Egypt that the children of Israel were in, he will come, stretch out his arm, and destroy them. Destroy their land to free the children of Israel who were sacrificing to him in secret. Let's continue on.
Egypt shall mourn, And the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague, and punishment that Abba shall bring upon it.
So these plagues that came upon Egypt shall come upon modern Egypt, spiritual Egypt, in the latter days as well. Continue on.
They that till the ground shall mourn, and their seeds shall fail through the blasting and hail.
So just as in the days of Egypt, when Moses prayed to the Most High and hail came down and destroyed the seed, it destroyed the crops and the harvest, so that the Egyptians will starve, the same thing would happen in these latter days as well. And how did the Most High bring this forth? What did he bring forth over the land to bring forth these plagues upon them? Read on.
And with a fearful constellation.
And with a fearful constellation. He brought these constellations out to bring forth the fear upon these the Egyptians, the oppressors of the children of Israel. And for us wanting and looking for a Passover in these modern days, we cannot be neglectful of these constellations that the Most High brought forth as well. Priest Gabar, if you get Job chapter, no, you don't get that. Get Enoch chapter 72. We're going to continue on there. And APT, John, if you get Job chapter 38, verse 31. Now, once again, these constellations are something that we should be privy of, something that we should study and we should understand. Not going to the zodiacs, not saying I'm a Leo, so, you're compatible with me. Not that. But use that to know when the Most High will bring forth plagues, calamity, or blessings unto his saints. This is what the constellations are about. They bring forth influences upon the earth. Once again, not influencing you to be compatible with somebody, but influencing the saints to do something righteous, or calamity to come upon those who hate and oppress the children of Israel. Let's get that when you got it. Job chapter 38, verse 31.
Cast thou bind and sweet influences on Pleiades.
Can you bind the sweet influences of Pleiades? Now, obviously, he's using these Greek names they attributed to these months, or the translators, I should say, impose the Greek names that they put upon these constellations. However, he's telling you that these constellations bring forth influences upon the earth. And he's telling you, mere man, can you say, nah, I'm not going to be influenced by that constellation? It's a rhetorical question. Of course you will. You cannot bind them. You cannot stop these influences that come from these constellations. Continue on.
Or loose the bands of Orion.
Can you loose the bands or the restrictions that come from Orion, one of these constellations, one of these amalgamations of the stars in heaven? Now, obviously, these aren't the names that are attributed to them. Once again, these are the translators putting in their concept of the constellations, not knowing our culture, not knowing that the Most High gave it to us well before it was given to the Greeks and the Romans. Continue on.
Canst thou bring forth Mazaroth in his season?
Canst thou bring forth Mazaroth in his season? Mazaroth is the Hebrew word for constellation, showing you that they were observing these in their time as well. They even have their own word for it, Mazaroth, as you'll see within the calendars on their respective pages as well. For each month, you'll see the Mazaroth that is attributed. You won't see Arcturus or Pleiades or Orion, but you'll see the true constellations that we're going to get into in a second, most High willing. So can mere man bring forth Mazaroth whenever he wants? Can he say, now I need this constellation to come? He cannot. He has to wait on the Most High to bring it forth. Read on.
Or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons?
So mere man does not have the power to bring forth the stars. They must wait and be patient on the Heavenly Father to observe times and seasons. They cannot say, I want it to be the heat of summer right now. We still have 2 more months to go. We must wait and be patient on the Heavenly Father. Now, let's show that these constellations are in league and tied to the sun, tied to the portals that we mentioned earlier. Let's get Enoch chapter 72, and let's read that again in verse 3. Priest Gabarya.
I saw 6 portals in which the sun rises, and 6 portals in which the sun sets, and the moon rises and sets in these portals.
So the sun rises and sets in these 6 portals of the first half and the 6 portals of the latter half. And the moon also rotates within these portals. It doesn't follow the sun. It strays off a few days every month. And then continue on. Who else is within these portals?
And the leaders of the stars, and those who they lead.
So the leaders of the stars, those angels pushing and bring forth the stars in their season, come within these 12 portals within the year. Let's read on.
6 in the east and 6 in the west.
So once again, 6 when the sun is waning or gaining strength, getting warmer and hotter, and 6 when the sun is decreasing, when it is waning and getting shorter within the days. Let's read on.
And all following each other in accurately corresponding order.
All right, so these, the sun, moon, and stars, they all work together in their accurate corresponding order. Once again, we talked about how the moon's order is to fall back 10 days every year. However, the sun and the stars, they stick together. They do not deviate one from another. Let's jump to chapter 74 of Enoch and get the 9th verse, once again talking about the same point, how these stars follow the sun within their portals for these 30 days. And the next portal, they shift. Enoch chapter 74, verse 9.
And I saw their positions, how the moons rose and the sun set in those days. And if 5 years are added together, the sun and overplus of 30 days, and all the days which accrue to it for one of those 5 years when they are full amount to 364 days. And the overplus of the sun and of the stars amount to the 6 days. In 5 years, 6 days every year comes to 30 days. And the moon falls behind the sun and the stars to the number of 30 days.
So we see the sun and the moon being once again in line with one another, as the moon falls back from them 10 days every year. Let's continue on.
The 12th verse. The sun and the stars bring in all the years exactly.
All right, so the sun in these portals brings forth the years exactly in 12 portals with their intercalary days, and also the stars as well with that sun. These stars follow the sun for 30 days within those same portals. They do not deviate like the moon does, changing and falling back a few days every portal. Let's continue on.
It says, so that they do not advance or delay their position by a single day until eternity.
So the sun and the stars keep their position continually. They do not deviate from a single day. Continue.
But complete the years with perfect justice in 364 days.
So as we mentioned, not 365 days, not 354 if you were following the moon, but 364 days perfectly with the sun and the stars. Now, let's jump to Genesis chapter 26, verse 2, Priest Tijon, or AP Tijon. Let's get Genesis chapter 26, verse 2, and let's examine these constellations further so that we see that the sun and the moon, they both come in these portals, but the moon falls back a day or so every portal, up to 10 days in the year. And the stars, they follow the sun perfectly, bringing forth these constellations, bringing forth this grouping of stars that influence the earth within their season. So we see on this diagram that each portal has a constellation on it. And what you won't see is, as we said, Arcturus or Orion or Pleiades. We're going to get in what you do see, being that they are the children of Israel. Let's get Genesis chapter 26, verse 2. APT, John.
And the Most High appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven.
All right, so Isaac was given promise that he would be multiplied and blessed like Abraham was given that same promise. Now, the Most High told him, I will multiply your seed like the stars of heaven. Now, on a surface level, yeah, he is talking about quantity. Nobody can go and count every single star in the sky. So shall the children of Israel be. But he's also talking in cryptically, in a mystery. saying, I will multiply them and make them like the stars of heaven. They shall be like the constellations that Enoch spoke about. These shall be the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Continue on.
And will give unto thy seed in all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed.
All right. So through all these sons of Isaac and the sons of Jacob, shall the nations of the earth be blessed. They will receive blessings through the constellations that are attributed to each of the sons of Jacob. Let's go to Genesis chapter 29, verse 32. As we talk about these constellations further. So we see that the children of Israel are to be like the stars of heaven, not just in multitude, but also in purpose, in name, and everything that was given to them. They were to be like the stars of heaven, bringing forth the influences of their constellation according to their birth order and according to their name. So the children of Israel, there were 12 of them. That's just like there were 12 portals. And in those portals was a certain attribute that was given to each of these children of Israel as well, according to their birth order following the sun. So we start with these constellations. We can pull up the chart again as we look at the constellations. In the first, or in the row under the seasons, we'll see that the children of Israel were given the constellations. And starting at the first portal, not the first month, but the first portal at the winter season, at the winter solstice, I should say, you see the children of Israel receiving their constellation, starting with the firstborn being Reuben. Let's get that in Genesis chapter 29, verse 32. APT, John.
And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, surely the Most High has looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me.
So Reuben, meaning affliction, the Most High looked upon him and brought forth a child through Leah, even though Jacob did not like Leah as much as he did Rachel. So this was his firstborn son. The Most High opened her womb to receive seed, and she bare him his firstborn son, being Reuben, which actually means firstborn of the Most High. And this is, once again, the first portal when, as we say, the son is being reborn. Not to be worshipped, but something to count our calendars with. Let's continue on in verse 33.
And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, because the Most High hath heard I was hated, he hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon.
So Simeon, being the second-born son, meaning the Most High will hear, is the second portal. Also a blessed wind, which we're going to get into in a little bit as well, Most High willing. But we see the second-born son bearing the constellations of the second month, of the second portal, I should say. Let's read on.
And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore was his name called Levi. So
Levi, meaning to be joined unto the Most High, was the third-born son, being the third portal, or being attributed to the constellation of the stars in the third portal of the sun. This is how the constellations, according to the children of Israel, were numbered and were put together on this calendrical study guide. You see where it says the third portal, getting closer to the vernal equinox, the tribe of Levi is put there as the constellation, and it brings forth its influences in the 12th month to join yourself with the Heavenly Father. Let's continue on.
And she conceived again and bare a son. And she said, now will I praise the Most High. Therefore she called his name Judah and left bearing.
So Judah, being the fourth-born son, is given the constellation within the fourth portal of the sun. And this portal, conveniently, corresponds to the first month, the month in which the Messiah from the tribe of Judah was crucified and sacrificed and became our Passover. This is the month in which you praise the Most High during the Passover sacrifices, the month in which you dwell with the Heavenly Father. This constellation brings forth those influences of praise and worship to our Abba that entire month. There are so many high holy days packed within that month that it's hard to not be influenced to praise the Heavenly Father. Let's continue on into the next chapter as we continue looking at some of the sons born of Jacob. Genesis chapter 30, verse 1.
And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister, and said unto Jacob, Give me children, or else I die. And Jacob anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, Am I in Abba's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of thy womb? And she said, Behold, my maid Bilhah, go unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife, and Jacob went in unto her. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, Abba hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan.
All right, so now we see in the fifth born son of Jacob was Dan, meaning the judge. The Most High shall judge. So we see in the second month, the month that we are currently in, we see the constellation of Dan, meaning the Most High shall hear the prayers of the saints and judge accordingly in this blessed wind. So obviously you can look at the entire chart. We're not going to go through the entire birth order of all the sons of Jacob, the sons of Israel, but you'll see within this chart, this cycle of the year, all the children of Israel being born in their proper season and being attributed to the constellation that is given in that portal. Now, continuing on in this diagram, let's jump back to where we were, going to the winds. Let's jump, Priest Gabar, if you get Enoch chapter 34, start at verse 1. We're going to talk about the winds. And everything here is interconnected. All these things come together as one. In this constellation, you have the month, and in this month, you have this portal, and in this portal, you have these winds, as we're going to address here as well. Let's go and read Enoch chapter 34, verse 1.
And from thence I went towards the north, to the end of the earth, and there I saw a great, glorious device at the end of the whole earth. And there I saw 3 portals of the heaven open in the heaven. Through each of them proceed north winds.
All right, so on another diagram, we put forth the faces of heaven. As the APs probably know, you'll see that in the north, which was when the year starts, starting from the quadrant and the powers of the light of the moon and how it is affecting the winds. How this moon brings forth power of the winds. Now, Enoch tells us reflects the light of the sun, which in these portals brings forth either a blessed wind or a cursed wind. Now the moon as well in the nighttime is reflecting that radiating power that's coming from the sun and brings forth the effects of the wind within the night. As the moon starts increasing in its light, it's bringing forth more power of that wind, whether it's for a blessing or for a curse. And as it decreases, it's decreasing the power of that wind in the night, whether, once again, a blessing or a curse. This is, once again, clearly displayed on each month of this calendrical study guide. We looked at the moon, not to count the times, not to count seasons, but to see when it is going to bring about the effects of the power of that wind. Second month, you'll see that on the 15th day of this month, on the makeup Passover, in this blessed wind, the moon is coming to its full strength, its full moon, to shine upon the saints as they come and give those sacrifices to the Most High. So once again, if anybody missed the Passover of the first month, you definitely want to come to the Passover of the second month, the makeup Passover. Once again, for the congregation, send me a message, pre-shower done, on the chat, and Most High willing, we'll get in contact with you and let you give you the registration so that you can come and make it to that Passover as well. Let's continue on and finish up that verse right there.
Enoch 60 and 12, the ending of it. And according to the power that is fitting, and the divisions of the stars according to their names, and how all the divisions are divided. And
let's jump now to Enoch chapter 82, verse 4, Priest Gabaria. As we continue on, we're going to talk about the count of the days. Let's bring up the chart once more, and you'll see that ending this chart, this diagram, in the last cell closest to the logo, you'll see the count of days within that month, within that portal. You'll see it start off with 30 days within the first month. And then it jumps up another 30 days within the second month, being 60. And then you'll see it jump another 30 days within the third month. But then also you add that first day, that one day for the intercalary day, the as well. And you'll see that count continue all throughout the year, all the way up to 364. So let's get that in the book of Enoch as it starts to talk about the days and how they are counted within the year. Once again, we read that earlier in the book of Jubilees, how the year is 364 days. Let's get that one more time in the book of Enoch as we start to come to the end of this diagram and move on to the next one.
Enoch 82:4.
Yep.
Blessed are all the righteous. Blessed are all those who walk in the way of righteousness and sin not as the sinners, in the reckoning of all their days in which the sun traverses the heaven, entering into and departing from the portals for 30 days, with the heads of the thousands of the order of the stars, together with the four which are intercalculated, which divide the four portions of the year, which lead them and enter with them 4 days.
All right, so we talked about this, how the year is indeed divided into 4 portions. However, the Most High said that there are only 2 seasons. 2 portions for a season, not summer, not spring and summer, but just summer. And you have the first quadrant of summer and the latter quadrant of summer. And these are separated by these intercalary days that are intercalated within the year. Obviously, starting off with the vernal equinox, going to the the summer solstice, then the autumnal equinox, then coming to the winter solstice toward the end of the solar year, bringing forth once again the first portal. Let's continue on.
82 in verse 5. Owing to them, men shall be at fault, and not reckon them in the whole reckoning of the year. Yea, men shall be at fault and not recognize them accurately.
So, unfortunately, men will once again go astray and start not recognizing these years accurately, not recognizing the count of the year, not recognizing the solstices and the equinoxes as they are to, according to the book of Enoch. Men will say it's always March 20th and there's nothing you can do to change it. It's always June 20th and there's nothing you can do. It's always going to be June 20th. Or, as our brothers do in Israel, they don't even look at the intercalary days. They don't even look at the equinoxes and the solstice. Maybe they look at the vernal equinox and then that's it. And they don't go and look at anything else. However, we are to calculate these intercalary days within our year as commanded of us in the book of Enoch. Let's continue on.
The 6th verse. For they belong to the reckoning of the year, and are truly recorded thereon forever. One in the first portal, one in the third, and one in the fourth, and one in the sixth.
All right, so now we see the portion, the place where these intercalary days are reckoned within the year. One in the first portal, one in the third, one in the fourth, and one in the sixth. Let's continue on.
And the year is completed in the 364 days.
All right, so with these 4 intercalary days, the year is completed in a cycle of 364 days. So there's 360 days in which the sun rotates, and there are 4 days at which the sun is at some kind of peak or some kind of point, being these intercalary days, which we're going to start talking about as we move on to the parts diagram. However, there is 364 days within the entire circuit of a year. Not 365, not 365.25, but 364 days of the year. Now, as we conclude this this diagram, let's move on to the next one as we start talking about the parts. Now, the parts that were given by Enoch are once again another topic that's very enigmatic, very complicated, very complex, and that many people are stumble at. let's go and look at these as we laid out within the calendar or the calendrical study guide, the parts that were given to Enoch. Let's pull up page 12 and go with these parts. Let's go and read that. And Priest Gabar, if you'll go to Enoch chapter 72, let's pick it up where we left off earlier. Let's go to verse 8 and start picking up about these parts that were given to Enoch.
When the sun rises in the heaven, he comes forth through that fourth portal 30 mornings in succession, and sets accurately in the fourth portal in the west of the heaven. And during this period, the days become daily longer, and the nightly shorter, to the 30th morning.
All right, so now we talked about earlier how this fourth portal corresponds to the first calendrical month. The month in which the Passover is the first month of the year that is started by the vernal equinox. This is that fourth portal. And within this portal, the day starts to become longer and the night becomes shorter. And many people can observe this within their own lives. They don't have to be a scholar to observe this, how the day and night fluctuate throughout the year. We know that in the winter, it starts getting dark around what they call 4 o'clock. And now the sun is up until about 8 o'clock Eastern time. We see that difference that's coming, and it's getting longer. And at the height of summer, it might be 9:30, almost 10 o'clock before it's actually dark. But let's continue on as we talk about these parts.
Enoch 72:10. On that day, the day is longer than the night by 9 parts. And the day amounts exactly to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts.
All right, so on the equinox, when the sun and the moon, well, I won't say the moon, but the daylight and the nighttime are exactly equal to each other in length, and being 12 hours long, or according to Enoch, 9 parts each. And when it transpires, when it goes into the next portal, the next month, the day increases by another part, making it 10 parts. And the night decreases by 1 part. There's a total of 18 parts. So to make up that total of 18 parts, the day being 10, the night has to equal 8 parts. And this is within the next portal. Let's continue on.
The 11th verse. The sun rises from that portal and sets in the fourth, and returns to the fifth portal of the east 30 mornings, and rises from it and sets in the fifth portal. And then the day becomes longer by 2 parts, and amounts to 11 parts.
All right, so as the sun starts to conclude the fifth portal, it starts to again increase in time, and it increases from this 11 or this 10 parts that it was in the second portal, or the fifth portal, I should say, being the second month. And now in the third month, it starts to equal 11 parts, while the night equals 7. Let's continue on.
And the night becomes shorter, and it amounts to 7 parts. And it returns to the east and enters into the sixth portal, and rises and sets in the sixth portal 1 and 30 mornings, on the account of its sign.
All right, so the account of its sign being this intercalary day, the summer solstice, coming at the end of this sixth portal, the parts once again begin to increase, and it becomes a total of 12 parts in the summer solstice. Let's continue on.
On that day, the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night, and the day becomes 12 parts, and the night is shortened and becomes 6 parts.
All right, and we see this all in the chart that is on page 12 of the calendrical study guide, as you should be able to see on your screen. We actually started in this chart from the start of the solar year, being the winter solstice. And you'll see in the 10th month, or first portal, how the light is actually 6 parts and the night is up to 12 parts. And as it increases, it goes up to the first month, or fourth portal, being 9 parts equal. And this is where we are in the book of Enoch at this current point, where it is 9 parts. If you look at the first month, 4th portal on this diagram, you'll see that they are both equal. And as you move up, you'll see that the daylight increases by another part, and it becomes 10 parts, and the night drops to 8 parts. And we see this going all the way up, this same addition of 1 part to the day and the decrease of 1 part to the night, each portal, up until the 4th month, being the 6th portal, as Enoch is talking about, the summer solstice, where the sun is at its greatest length, its highest point, being a total of 12 parts long, and the night being 6 parts long. Let's pick it up there where we are at the book of Enoch.
The book of Enoch, 72 and 15. And the sun mounts up to make the day shorter, and the night longer. And the sun returns to the east and enters into the 6th portal and rises from it and sets 30 mornings.
All right, so now we see that after this summer solstice, the sun mounts up to decrease again. It was increasing from the winter solstice all the way up to the summer solstice at its highest point. And now it shifts to decrease for another 6 months or 6 portals. Let's continue on.
It's like the moon. It waxes and it wanes.
Exactly. Just as the moon waxes and wanes within a month, the sun does this within an entire year. Mm-hmm. Let's continue on.
The 16th verse. And when the 30 mornings are accomplished, the days decrease by exactly 1 part. It becomes 11 parts, and the night 7 parts.
All right, so once again, we're starting to see that decrease of the parts in Enoch as you see the sun past the winter solstice. As it goes throughout these months, being the 6th portal of the latter half, or as we put it in the diagram, this 7th portal, you'll see it start to decrease by 1 part each portal or each month. Let's continue on.
And the sun goes forth from that 6th portal in the west and goes to the east and rises in the 5th portal for 30 mornings and sets in the west again in the 5th western portal. And on that day, the day decreases by 2 parts and amounts to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. And the sun goes forth from the 5th portal and sets in the 5th portal of the west and rises in the 4th portal for 130 mornings on the account of its sign.
All right,
and sets in the west.
So as it comes to the next sign, the autumnal equinox, it starts to equalize. It starts to decrease, and the night starts to increase to where they are equal as they meet at this sign known as the autumnal equinox, where they come to 9 parts. And you see that on the diagram here at the 7th month, or the 3rd portal of the latter half, being the autumnal equinox, they equal out once again. There's 9 parts of day and 9 parts of night, and it's going to start decreasing from here. It was increasing in the first portion that we read. Now it is going to decrease for the remainder of the year. Let's go and read on.
The 20th verse. And on that day, the day is equalized with the night and becomes equal length. And the night amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. And the sun rises from the portal and sets in the west, and returns to the east and rises 30 mornings in the 3rd portal, and sets in the west in the 3rd portal. And on that day the night becomes longer than the day, and the night becomes longer than the night, and the day shorter than the day till the 30th morning. And the night amounts exactly to 10 parts, and the day to 8 parts. And the sun rises from the 3rd portal and sets in the 3rd portal in the west and returns to the east. And for 30 mornings rises in the 2nd portal in the east, and in like manner sets in the 2nd portal in the west of the heavens. And on that day the night becomes the night amounts to 11 parts, and the day to 7 parts.
So we see the day and night reflecting one another as they traverse throughout the year. In the summer season, the day is increased up to in the summer season, the day increases up to 12 parts, going 1 part every portal. And the night ends up doing the same thing throughout the year, as you see on this diagram. We started this diagram at the winter solstice, the start of the solar season or the solar year, and the increase of days or the increase of parts throughout the days of this year, and then how it starts to decrease as well as we're reading. Now, let's go ahead and continue on. Let's finish this up before we start wrapping it up.
The 25th verse. And the sun rises on that day from the second portal and sets in the west in the second portal and returns in the east in the first portal for 1:30 mornings and sets in the first portal in the west of heaven. And on that day the night becomes longer and amounts to the double of the day, and the night amounts exactly to 12 parts, and the day to 6.
So we see that on the chart once again, that you see the night increasing to 12 parts and the day decreasing to 6 parts, making a total of 18 parts, but the night increasing to the majority of those parts being 12 parts. Let's continue on.
And the sun has traversed the division of its orbit and turns again on those division of his orbits and enters that portal 30 mornings and set also in the west opposite to it. And on that night has the night decreased in length by a 9th part, and the night has become 11 parts and the day 7 parts. And the sun has returned and entered into the second portal in the east and returned on those his divisions of his orbit for 30 mornings, rising and setting. And on that day, the night decreases in length, and the night amounts to 10 parts, and the day to 8. And on that day, the sun rises from the portal and sets in the west, and returns to the east and rises in the third portal for 1:30 mornings, and sets in the west of the heavens. And on that day the night decreases and the amounts to 9 parts, and to the day to 9 parts. And the night is equal to the day, and the year is exactly as it is day 364. And the length of the day and the night, and the shortness of the day and of the night arises through the course of the sun, and these distinctions are made.
All right, so now we see that the sun and the daylight and the nighttime affected by the sun goes throughout this cycle, and it equalizes. It is 9 parts each for the day and for the night at the vernal equinox, and it starts to increase by 1 part every portal or every month until the winter or until the summer solstice, when the sun is at its highest point, being 12 parts. And now after that summer solstice, the sun starts to decrease all the way up to the winter solstice, another 6 months, until the sun is at its lowest point, and the nights are 9 or 12 parts, and the day is 6 parts. And it starts to increase from there. The day starts to increase and equalize again at the vernal equinox, and the whole cycle repeats again throughout the entire year. Now, many people look at these parts and they try to say that Enoch is saying there's 18 hours of the day, which is actually not the case. Let's get that APT, Sean, if you get John chapter 11, verse 9. We'll go and hold that, and then also after that we're going to go to 1 Chronicles chapter 24 and read that as well. So Enoch is not saying that there are 18 hours within the day. What Enoch is doing, what Enoch was given actually, was a whole different metric of time. He was given a whole different way of calculating time for this cycle of the day and night. It's like us in America using miles, but we go over to Europe and they're saying kilometers. Now we're all going to go the same distance. The distance between Atlanta, Georgia, and London, the United Kingdom, is never going to change. But I may measure it in however far it is, 4,000 miles, but they might say that's 6,200 kilometers. It's a completely different metric of time. And to understand the difference, we have to do the proper conversions to understand exactly what's being spoken about within the book of Enoch. But let's prove that Enoch is not saying there's 18 hours of the day. John chapter 11, verse 9.
John chapter 11, verse 9. Yahushua answered, "Are there not 12 hours in the day?"
All right, Yahushua answered and said, "Are there not 12 hours of the day?" Speaking rhetorically. He's not looking for an answer. He's essentially saying there are 12 hours in the day, brothers and sisters, meaning there's also 12 hours of the night. Let's continue on.
If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world.
All right, so he's saying there's 12 hours of the day watch and 12 hours of the night watch as well. So if we as children of light, we must walk in the day watch. That is our time to shine and to give these oblations. But nonetheless, going back to the point, Yahushua, the Messiah, is saying there are indeed 12 hours of the day. Now let's get that in 1 Chronicles chapter 24. APT, John. As we brought this out several times, the course of David that was pushed out was for every lot or hour of the day. And if you look at the etymology of hour, it's not just talking about calculating time. The etymology of hour, it actually has this conception in 1 Chronicles 24, meaning a lot or a time of prayer. It is an allotted time of prayer throughout the day. And King David, in 1 Chronicles chapter 24, the bearer of this covenant, brought forth this course for 24 positions throughout the day, or 24 lots or hours, meaning positions or spaces for prayer, or sacrifice in this case. Let's get 1 Chronicles chapter 24, verse 1. ABT, John.
Now these are the divisions of the sons of Aaron. The sons of Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar. But Nadab and Abihu died before their father, and had no children. Therefore Eleazar and Ithamar executed the priest's office.
All right, so David is putting the priest in their office, in their appropriate course, and in their appropriate lot. Let's jump down to verse 5.
Thus were they divided by lots, one sort with another, for the governors of the sanctuary and governors of the house of Abba were the sons of Eleazar and the sons of Ithamar.
So we see these priests being divided within their lots to be governors over the house of the Most High, to institute these lots or these hours of prayer, these hours of giving sacrifice to the Most High. Let's continue on.
And Shemaiah, the son of Nethanel.
Actually, let's jump down to verse 7.
Now the first lot came forward to Jehoiarib, the second to Jedediah.
So we see the first lot coming to Jehoiarib. We're not going to get into the purposes. We have several classes where we talked about that. And we see the second lot coming to Jedediah. Let's jump down now to verse 18.
The 23 to Deliah, and the 24 to Maaziah.
So there were a total of 24 of these lots or these hours of prayer throughout the day. 12 of them being in the day and another 12 being in the night. This was the counting of time for man on earth. Now Enoch, by the angel, was given a different metric. He was in a whole different realm. He was not bound to the things of the earth. Just like if we go to another country, if you go to Europe, you're not going to use the same miles that you use over the United States. You're going to use kilometers or whatever type of metric they may be using. This is what Enoch was doing. He was given a whole different metric. He went to a whole nother country. He went up in the spirit. So he couldn't say, you still use miles. No, use these kilometers that we use up here in heaven. So these 18 parts in total, once again, you can do a mathematical formula to figure out how long or how many hours each of these parts are. Just like you can convert miles to kilometers, you can do the same thing with parts to hours. So if there are 18 parts in the according to Enoch, and there are 24 hours of the day, do simple division, you'll see that each part totals up to 1 1/3 hour. And if you do the math to check that, you'll see that that reigns true. Remember, at the equinoxes, the day and night total to 9 parts, according to Enoch. And how long is that on our time? If you multiply that 9 by 1.3, you'll get 12. That's exactly what we have on Earth. 12 hours at each of these vernal equinoxes. Now, I won't bore everybody with the continuing on with the mathematical aspect of it, but you'll see that it is just a simple ratio. These 18 parts are not hours, or they're not. He's not saying there's 18 hours in the day. There's 18 parts. It's a completely different measurement than the hours that we use to measure our time, and we have to put these hours within these parts of the day. APT, John, if you get Numbers chapter 28, verse 1, as we start to conclude this class. So we went through these parts of the calendar, these components of it, to break them down so that people can understand them as they start utilizing their calendrical study guides that they're getting, that they're ordering from our website, Shechaniah.com. Now, you'll see on page 11, you can go through this class, pause it, look back through it to get those explanations of this cyclical diagram of the year. And you can also go through this to understand the parts that is given on page 11 and 12 of the calendrical study guide as well. Once again, it's important to know these so we can come in due season to worship the Heavenly Father. We don't want to become coming out of season. We don't want to say it's a blessed wind when it's really a cursed wind. Yeah. We don't want to say it's a cursed wind when it's really a blessed wind. We don't want to say it's the new month when it's really not. And we don't want to say it's Passover when it's really not. And we don't want to say it's the Feast of Weeks when it's really an unclean day. Let's read that once again, Numbers chapter 28, verse 1. APT, John.
And the Most High spake unto Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel, and say unto them, My offering and my bread for my sacrifices made by fire, for a sweet savor unto me, shall ye observe to offer unto me in their due season.
So it is commanded of us to come in due season and offer sacrifices to the Most High at the proper time. We cannot say, I'm going to come some other time, I'm going to come late, I'm going to come early. You can't do that. You must come right on time, or else you will be breaking those commandments. Once again, it is commanded of us. The true commandments in Exodus 34, not Exodus 20, tell us to come and serve the Most High with our sacrifices. And if we're coming late, if we're coming early, if we're not coming at all, we are breaking these commandments.
And something I want to just throw out there again. I know you've heard us say it many times before. There is no rehearsing of the righteous acts. You don't rehearse the righteous acts. You do them. You see? So you got brothers saying, well, we're at least rehearsing the righteous acts. No, you're not doing them at all, because you're coming out of season. You're not coming in the time that you're supposed to. So that rehearsing, I know Yaradun has a good breakdown of that for the English. I don't remember.
Oh, you're trying to throw it back on me, huh? So definitely rehearsal. Once again, if you look at Old English versus Modern English, the terms we use are completely different. Like love means something different today than it meant back in 1611 when this Bible was translated. Same with heart. It means something completely different. Same with rehearse. Rehearse doesn't just mean to practice. I'm just in training. Rehearse in Old English means to actually execute something. That's what rehearsal means. I'm actually doing it. I'm rehearsing these acts by doing them. They weren't in, in Judges when it talked about rehearsing the righteous acts. It didn't mean they were practicing. In Joshua's time, after Moses had gave them all these commandments, I'm still practicing though. Don't judge me, Moses. No, they were doing those acts. They weren't just practicing them. And same today. We are relearning the culture that was lost from us, and now it's time to implement them and do them. It's not time to practice. We are in a battle zone. We are in a war. Mm-hmm. And don't get your basic training in the middle of a warfare, in the middle of a war zone, in the middle of the battle. No, it's time to do. Yeah. It's do or die. And that's how it is today. Let's get these calendars so we know when to come to the Most High and serve Him, so we don't suffer the same consequences that were given to us in those times of the judges and in the times of the Babylonians. Let us be redeemed from this captivity rather than stay within it. So we're going to conclude the class there about the calendrical study guide, the components of this calendar. We're going to open the floor for Q&A. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and pose them now. Those watching online, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the live chat, and most I willing will try to answer those questions as well. Make sure they're all relative and related to the class as well, and we'll open the floor, starting with the audience. All right, any questions? I guess it was a thorough class then. All praise it, definitely. All right. If there's no classes or no questions, we'll go ahead and shut down the class there. All praise the Most High for those who attended, those who watched, those who were studious. Once again, get your biblical calendrical study guides ASAP. We still have some that are being printed, and most of them we're going to get the physical copies out as soon as possible. We still have the digital copies available right now as well to order. So definitely go on the website and order one of those calendars. And if for whatever reason you cannot manage that, what is required to get one of those calendars, we have a copy that is available with no free will offering needed that shows just the high holy days. We don't want anybody to miss these high holy days or these memorial days simply because of finances. We are all commanded to serve the Most High, whether we are rich or whether we are poor, whether we are in a high standing in society or whether we are low. We must all come and serve the Most High in due season. So order one of those complimentary calendars that have just the high holy days in it, and come serve the Most High on those commanded days. Peace and blessings to all the children of Israel and all the saints that are getting consecrated in this new and living covenant. Most High will convene again next Sabbath. Peace and blessings. Shalom.
He who hath ears to hear, listen carefully as we speak virtue, reaching the world through the efforts of the priests, repairers of the breach, restorers of the paths, rebuilding the tents of David. Our home is found at last at the tabernacle of congregation, where we baptize and anoint our nation, performing oblations upon the brazen altar, walking in the ways of the appointed Savior with poise, escaping the noise from Satan and his poisonous nature. Without fail he accuses the brethren, using his weapons of collusion, and then sin comes upon us. And we deserve it, to be honest. We were cursed, cause we honored and were worshipping the gods of this world and was living lawless. At first to the written law without purpose and little knowledge, serving our wicked conscience. Thus, righteous judgment was handed down from the courts of the Most High. A sobering moment, but let's be holy and pure while we endure and ensure life comes forth. Let us hold tight, secure in our roles as we strive, adorned with our robes white and clean. It might seem like the loneliest road, but we stride in hope as the Most High reveals his ideals. And so we exercise patience as well as love, dwelling safe in the seventh covenant, graciously set the sustenance. Let us exemplify faith through hell and suffering, praying to quell the punishment, waiting on heaven's government to be established, as it was in the Garden of Eden, when Abba had breathed life into creation, and our forefather received the living word. No more are we called prisoners, we live and learn, and study to be approved as the sons of Yahweh, who were lovingly given rules to better build and preserve truth. The bricks surrounding the kingdom are the 7 pillars of virtue. This is a house of wisdom. Shalom.